W8VPV. Repeater. W8VPV. Repeater. Net. W8VPV. Repeater. PL110.9.
Good evening, and welcome to the Cuyahoga Falls Amateur Radio Club's Monday evening transmission of Amateur Radio Newsline. My name is Russ, and my call is KDA-BYT. But for this presentation of Newsline, I will be using the club call Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor. Without further ado, this is Amateur Radio Newsline.
Amateur Radio Newsline report number 2413 with a release date of Friday, January 26th, 2024, to follow in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The following is a QST. A young de-expedition team preps to leave for Guyana. An FCC webinar explains experimental licenses, and imagine needing a radio license just to listen. All this and more as Amateur Radio Newsline report number 2413 comes your way right now.
From around the world, this is Newsline, Amateur Radio's independent on-the-air news and bulletin service. Now, reporting from Union, Kentucky, here's Neil Rapp, W8VPV.
We begin this week with an important call sign, 8R7X. You'll be hearing it on the air as a quartet of youthful de-expeditioners prepares at long last for adventure and QSOs in Guyana. John Williams, VK4JJW, has that story.
The antennas are packed, other equipment is being tested, and 4 young friends, Philip Springer, DK6SP, Jamie Williams, M0SDV, Sven Lovrick, DJ4MX, and Tommy Varro, HA8RT, are ready to depart for their journey to Guyana, where they'll activate 8R7X from the 14th to the 24th of February. It's a shared dream long deferred by pandemic travel restrictions, but now with that behind them, this youthful quartet of seasoned de-expeditioners is prepared for the challenges of operating from their temporary South American QDH. A statement on the team's website expresses their excitement, adding that their recently issued call sign has a prefix that has never before been used. The 4 will continue to update their website and to keep DXs informed via social media channels as the date gets closer. They'll be operating CW, SSB, FT8 and RITI on the HF bands. If you want to follow their progress, see the team website listed in the text version of this week's newscast at arnewsline.org. This is John Williams, VK4JJW.
The ARRL has announced some changes to its membership policy and is offering full-time students who are 21 years of age or younger a free associate membership in place of paying the current $30 annual fee. The ARRL has also reintroduced life membership and a 70-plus life membership for ham 70 and older on a revenue-neutral basis. Life membership was suspended last year. The changes were announced in an ARRL member bulletin released within 24 hours of the conclusion of the ARRL board meeting held January 19th and 20th. The ARRL also reported that the board has decided to defer to another time any proposed revisions to its conflict of interest policy, a proposed change to Bylaw 46 discussed at the January meeting. By unanimous vote, the ARRL has established a committee to review ethics guidelines and standards and to review Bylaw 46 further, in addition to Bylaw 42, which applies to the Ethics and Elections Committee. The ARRL bulletin directed members to their website, where the league expected to post the complete minutes of the board's annual meeting. The creator of the protocol that eventually came to govern synchronized timekeeping on billions of devices around the planet has become a silent key. Cell MBKB3TZD tells us about it.
Computer scientist and unstoppable tinkerer Dave Mills, W3HCF, was a professor at the University of Delaware when he first tackled the question of how to synchronize the time on billions of devices around the world, including computers, switches, satellites, servers, and clocks. He ultimately addressed this question through the development of Network Time Protocol, or NTP, which he introduced to the world as the Internet began emerging as a global force. Dave became a silent key on the 17th of January, according to various postings. A fellow in the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, he was the recipient of the IEEE 2013 Internet Award. A university professor for 22 years, Dave carved out a long career with an emphasis on making his work accessible to individuals with low vision, a condition he developed as a result of glaucoma at a young age. A September 2022 profile in the New Yorker magazine recalled Dave's earliest work at ComSat, where he worked on ARPANET, viewed as the precursor to the Internet. The article noted that in his earlier work at the University of Edinburgh, he authored programs to decode telegraph signals sent over shortwave and studied how clocks functioned in a power grid. He eventually turned his attention toward timekeeping and the UTC, the international civil time used by amateur radio operators and others around the world. Friends and colleagues shared their memories in postings on various websites and reflectors. A post on the Internet Society mailing list from Carl Aubach declared mournfully, "Oh my, we have lost Father Time." Dave was 85. This is LMB KB3 TZD.
The Summits on the Air community is grieving a loss of a ham whose valued support was evident in their logs. He was an avid soda chaser, a high scorer in the soda scheme, and a frequent contact in the logs of many. We hear about him from Kevin Trotman, N5 PRE.
Soda enthusiasts have shared the news on Soda Reflector that Bob Warden, KU4R, a well-known and high-scoring soda chaser from Tennessee, has become a silent key. According to one post, Bob recently qualified for a certificate for earning 50,000 chaser points. At the time of his death, on the 19th of January, he had a total of 61,408 points. The activators all agreed that Bob was a formidable presence in their logs whenever they climbed the summits and called CQ. One activator, Paula K9IR, noted that she logged 104 contacts with him over the years, and he answered her call in nearly 30% of her activations. Another activator, Matt, KQ4CCP, shared that Bob was a contact when he did his first soda activation on 2 meters and eventually became his top chaser. Licensed in 1978, Bob wrote on the site pnwsoda.org that he spent his first 35 years operating VHF, UHF, and made some EME contacts as well, and became interested in soda chasing much later. He also enjoyed rag chewing and CW. This is Kevin Trotman, N5 PRE.
Could ham somehow be responsible for the evolution of the information age? A recent magazine article says it's very likely indeed. We hear more about this from Andy Morrison, K9AWM. Radio and TV broadcasting, mobile communications, and other elements of the so-called wireless revolution can have all their roots traced back to amateur radio, according to a recent article in the IEEE Communications magazine, IEEE Explore. The article, which is in Volume 61, Issue 11, credits amateur radio inventiveness that was incubated in the earliest amateur radio clubs growing on college campuses in the early 20th century. It singles out the Wireless Telegraph Club of Columbia University's New York City campus, noting the students' members' propensity for wireless experimentation, and singles out one club member, Edwin Howard Armstrong, considered the father of FM radio. At the same time that ham clubs were springing up on other U.S. college campuses, societies for wireless enthusiasts were being born in Australia, the UK, and elsewhere in the world. The article traces how the advent of FM led to the development of mobile phones, and how amateurs' bottomless curiosity continues to be the driving spirit behind more and more inventive ways of communicating. The article was written by Theodore Rappaport, N9NB, of New York University's Wireless Research Center. It is the second in a series of 3 articles being published by the IEEE. The previous article on the subject was published in October 2022 in Volume 60, Issue 10. This is Andy Morrison, K9AWM. An international crew of amateur radio operators is aboard the International Space Station in the latest commercial mission to be launched from Kennedy Space Center. The crew of Axiom Mission 3 consists of retired NASA astronaut Michael Lopez Algaria, KE5GTK, Italian co-pilot Walter Vilade, IU0RWB, Turkish mission specialist Alper Gezavaja, KJ5DIY, and Marcus Lunt of Sweden, KJ5COO. They arrived at the ISS on Saturday, January 20th, 2 days after their launch, and were welcomed by the 7 crew members, most of whom are also licensed hams. Time for you to identify your station. We are the Amateur Radio Newsline, heard on bulletin stations around the world, including the K2ADA repeater in Ocala, Florida, on Fridays and Saturdays at 7 p.m. local time. There are no prizes, no awards, no certificates, really nothing except bragging rights in a newly organized program that focuses instead on activations at racing events, any kind of racing events. Jack Parker, W8ISH, tells us about racing on the air.
On your mark, get set, get on the air. That's the message delivered this month by organizers of Races on the Air, a program that is purely for fun, not for points. Hams are being encouraged to activate from any type of formal race, whether the competitors are bicycles, horses, boats, airplanes, cars, even off-road motorsport. The objective is to show amateur radio in action and to increase its visibility at places where the public gathers. Callers simply use CQROTA or CQ Racing on the Air to attract attention to whoever is on the bands. Attracting attention at the event itself is as easy as finding a place to set up. The Racing on the Air forum on the Worldwide DX radio site has all the details at worldwidedx.com. Even locations such as the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which already has an association with ham radio activations, are eligible to participate. The ROTA organizers ask only that hams post the details of their planned activation, including modes and frequencies, and then upload the log afterward to the website. Ladies and gentlemen, start your rigs. This is Jack Parker, W8ISH.
In Albuquerque, New Mexico, mobile radios and instructions to build antennas are part of a donation program for a humanitarian effort. We hear about that from Ralph Squatchy, KK6ITB.
A donation of 14 mobile radios and simple designs for homebrew antennas have gone the distance from Albuquerque, New Mexico, to a humanitarian organization providing social support and medical care to displaced families in Ukraine. The radios and the plans for antenna construction are a project of the Bosque Amateur Radio Club N5BRC. When Joseph Nichols, the founder of careforukraine.org, asked his brother Art Nichols, KI5GOL, if the hams could assist with the volunteers' communication needs as they address the sheltering, educational, and social concerns of the families, Art decided to approach the club for ideas. Bill Kent, N5UJC, Larry Elkin, NY5L, Terry Zipes, W4RCN, and club president Jerry Acito, K6LIE, have since established BarkNet UA, the program by which the hams are providing assistance. Club members have donated $700 to the effort, which paid for the 14 handheld radios. Art told the Albuquerque Journal that by using the club's simple plans, the organization's volunteer team has been able to build and use 65 antennas. Joseph Nichols, a former biomedical equipment engineer now living in Ukraine, writes on the GoFundMe page of Care for Ukraine that the hams gifts have permitted the installation of small micro networks of solar-powered radio equipment used by volunteers in rural areas for emergency, non-military purposes. He said that the equipment is shared freely with other volunteer aid groups as well. This is Ralph Squilacci, KK6ITB.
The heart and soul of the process by which new technologies are developed and launched is often the experimental license, which in the U.S. is issued by the FCC. The agency is hosting a webinar so researchers and experimenters can learn more about how to put their tinkering on the air legally. Stephen Kinford, N8WB, has that story.
The Federal Communications Commission will be presenting a step-by-step guide to its rules, policies, and procedures for anyone seeking an experimental license. Different kinds of these licenses are available. They enable eligible license holders to conduct research and testing while safeguarding other users of the spectrum against harmful interference. The webinar will be held on the 7th of February at 1 p.m. Eastern Time over Zoom and requires registration to participate. It will be led by Martin Duxket, Chief of the Electromagnetic Compatibility Division in the FCC's Office of Engineering and Technology. Experimental licenses may be issued to individuals, hospitals, universities, and other applicants. To register, see the link in the text version of this week's newscast at arnewsline.org. I am Stephen Kinford, N8WB.
The Radio Society of Great Britain is looking for volunteers who are at least 26 years old to reach out to youngsters about amateur radio. Jeremy Boot, G4NJH, has that story.
Deepening its commitment to engaging more young people in amateur radio, the Radio Society of Great Britain is looking for prospective volunteer youth country representatives, particularly in Wales and Northern Ireland. The representatives would be involved in direct outreach to youngsters at schools, in youth clubs, and in the Scouts, Guides and Cadets. They would also participate in larger activities such as British Science Week and Yota Month. Representatives also maintain a presence at RSGB activities. Licensed amateurs who are interested in being part of the next generation in radio should apply no later than the 16th of February. Visit rsgb.org/volunteers for details. This is Jeremy Boot, G4NJH.
In the world of DX, listen for Willie, ON4AVT, operating as 6W7/ON4AVT from Warang, Senegal, from the 3rd of February until the 16th of April. He is expected to operate mostly FT8 on 80 through 10 meters. He will also be operating through the QO100 satellite. See QRZ.com for QSL details. Irv F5HRY is active from Marie Galante Island, Guadeloupe, as FG/F5HRY until the 2nd of February. Listen for him on 80 through 10 meters using CW and sideband. See QRZ.com for QSL details. Bernhard DL2GAC will be active again as H44MS from Malida, IOTA number OC047, in the Solomon Islands. He expects to be on the air around the 10th of February and will be active every day on 160 through 6 meters until the 25th of April. See QRZ.com for QSL details. In this final story, we look at the privilege of having a radio license. Ours allows us to transmit, but imagine a time when you needed a license simply to listen. Ed Durant, DD5LP, tells us about a ham radio event that recalls that moment in history.
Special event stations run the air throughout Germany calling QRZ and using the call sign suffix 100FK. Their operation marks 100 years since the establishment of the German radio cartel. 10 associations who work together to train interested radio hobbyists to be able to take the receiver license tests run by the German government, which allowed them to listen to the few AM broadcast stations that were just starting up. The creation of the Deutschen Funkkartell on the 24th of January 1924 marked the dawn of early radio in Germany, and their efforts raised the number of listeners to 1 million in just 18 months. The mandated test and license to simply listen to a radio was the precursor to the amateur radio transmission license later. Now it's your turn to listen, this time without a license to listen, from anywhere in the world. These stations will be commemorating the start of radio 1 century ago and plan to be on the air through the 31st of May. For details, visit 100fk.de. Fortunately, hams have the license not just to listen, but to respond as well. This is Ed Durant, DD5LP.
Does your amateur radio experience ever inspire a bit of poetry? Why not immortalize that incredible QSO or fantastic antenna by participating in the Amateur Radio Newsline Haiku Challenge? Use the entry form on our website, arnewsline.org, and please follow the rules for writing your 3-line haiku. We cannot accept entries that are not written in traditional haiku form. And be sure to check out our previous winners. With thanks to the Albuquerque Journal, Amateur Radio Daily, AMSAT News Service, ARRL, CQ Magazine, David Behar, K7DB, DX World, FCC, Funk Telegram, 425DX News, IEEE, NASA, QRZ.com, Racing on the Air, Radio Dark, shortwaveradio.de, Soda Reflector, Wireless Institute of Australia, Worldwide DX, YouTube, and you, our listeners. That's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline. We remind our listeners that Amateur Radio Newsline Newsline is an all-volunteer nonprofit organization that incurs expenses for its continued operation. If you wish to support us, please visit our website at arnewsline.org and know that we appreciate you all. We also remind our listeners that if you like our newscast, please leave us a 5-star rating wherever you subscribe to us. For now, with Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT, at the news desk in New York, and our news team worldwide, I'm Neil Rapp, W9VPG in Union, Kentucky, saying 7-3. And as always, we thank you for listening. Amateur Radio Newsline is copyright 2024, all rights reserved.
This concludes our Monday evening transmission of Amateur Radio Newsline. Net to start in about 9 minutes.
W8VPV. Repeater. W8VPV. Repeater.
Good evening. Calling all amateur radio operators. Welcome to the Cuyahoga Falls Amateur Radio Club Monday night VHF UHF net. My name is John and my call is W03X. However, for the purposes of this net, I'll be using the club call Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor. This is an open directed net. All amateur radio operators are invited and encouraged to check in. You do not have to be a club member. All traffic will go through net control, and since emergency traffic may break in at any time, please leave a brief pause between transmissions. The purpose of this net is to bring together all amateur radio operators for the exchanging of amateur-related ideas and information to enhance net operating practices and to keep members up to date about club happenings. This net meets here every Monday evening at 8:30 p.m. local time, preceded by amateur radio Newsline at 8:01. We'll start with announcements and then ask for check-ins from any officer or member who has an announcement of general interest to the club. Once that is complete, I'll take check-ins, call signs only, 5 at a time, and confirming each call. Then I'll correspond with those 5 check-ins and ask for 5 more until it tapers off, and then I'll go one at a time. If you're a regular participant, I'll probably recognize you by call sign. If not, please give your call repeated phonetically, followed by your name and your location. When all check-ins have been corresponded with, I will give one last call for check-ins after repeating the announcements. We also operate a band exploration net at 9:30 p.m. after this net. Please join us if you have the privileges and equipment. The band exploration net this evening will be on 160 meters on or about 1887 kilohertz, and I will ask your opinion during this net if we want to do AM or lower sideband. For the other weeks, this is the 5th Monday of a month, and it's winter time. That's why we're trying 160 meters. Other 5th Mondays of a month, we do other bands, including, let's see here, 12 meters and 17 meters. So, but this evening we'll be on 160 meters. Okay, so this is, okay, here are the announcements. This is W03X, name here's John at the mic. This is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor. Here are the announcements. February 14th is our next business meeting. Please try to attend either in person or on Zoom because we have some issues that we want to vote on, and we need a quorum, which means we need about 16. We need 16 voting members to have a quorum. So please try to attend. Then that's on February 14th. Okay, we meet in person for meetings at the Pilgrim United Church of Christ. Its address is 130 Broad Boulevard. But you get to the parking lot, which is on 2nd Street, south of Broad Boulevard. And the entrance is just off the parking lot. Then on February 28th is our activity meeting. The activity hasn't necessarily been announced yet. Our Hamfest is April 13th. That's a Saturday, April 13th. So start making plans to attend that. Also, we need volunteers for that Hamfest. The Friday before, that'd be April 12th, Friday evening, to set up the tables and chairs. And then we need volunteers early on Saturday because vendors will be setting up then also early. So we need somebody at the doors to make sure that nobody's sneaking in. And so that's, and also to help the vendors find their tables. There will be a document on the website where last year's is on there right now as an example, but there will be a new one where you can sign up for as a volunteer and for what type of activity you would be signing up for. That's all that I have in the way of announcements at this time. So this is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor asking for check-ins from officers or members who have items of special interest to the club. Okay, not hearing any. This is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor asking for check-ins, and if you're going to operate on the band exploration net at 9:30, starting at 9:30, let me know if you prefer lower sideband or AM for that 160 meter net. This is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor asking for check-ins. Give your call sign. Let me acknowledge your call sign one at a time.
Kilo Bravo 8 Victor Hotel Kilo John, no traffic.
Could you repeat that again, your call sign?
Kilo Bravo 8 Victor Hotel Kilo.
Okay, thanks. We'll get back with you in a moment. Or are you in and out?
Just in and out tonight.
Okay, I have you as in and out. That's KB8 VHK. Thanks. 73, and have a good evening. Okay, another check-in, please. Mike, are you going to be on the 160 meter net? Do you prefer AM or lower sideband? Okay, the calendar has lower sideband, so that's probably what we'll go with. Okay, thanks. We'll listen for you then. Okay, this is Whiskey 8, Victor Papa Victor, asking for check-ins.
W8VPV, this is Kilo Echo 8, Victor Quebec X-Ray. KE8 VQX, Joe in Akron.
KE8 VQX, Joe, we'll get back with you in a moment. And there was somebody else in there too.
KA8 WTK.
KA8 WTK. We'll get back with you in a moment there, Bill. Another check-in, please.
PU.
K8PU, I have you, Larry. Another check-in, please. Okay, I don't hear any at this time. We'll go with Joe, KE8VQX. Go ahead, Joe, with your comments.
W8VPV, this is KE8VQX. Thanks for getting me in there, John. And hello, everyone else. I really have no traffic for the net, John. Just wanted to say hello. And as far as the exploration net goes, I don't have an antenna for 160, but the radio might tune it. I'm afraid it might blow up. So anyway, I'll give it back to you, John. This is KE8VQX, back to net control.
Okay, Joe. Let's see. You don't have to run full power. Don't blow the radio up. But the tuner might be able to tune the wire. Although I guess 3 to 1 is as bad as it can deal with. Maybe, I'm not sure. So I'll listen for you and we'll see what happens. Okay, thanks for checking in and have a good evening. Okay, Bill, KA8WTK, go ahead with your comments.
Good evening, John, and the rest of the net. This is Bill, KA8WTK. As far as the exploration net goes, I'm always up for AM, but I'll go with the crowd. So I found it very interesting in the amateur radio Newsline tonight about Germany requiring receiving licenses. That's not as far-fetched as you would think. Up in Canada, they started that in June of 1913. You had to have an amateur experimental radio license just to listen, to be able to operate a radio just for listening. That didn't last long, because in August 1914 they entered World War I, and until May 1919 there was no radio transmissions or people allowed to use radio receivers. Let me break for time. In 1922, they instituted a receive-only license that didn't require the examination. And you required a license for your receiver, your broadcast receiver, until 1953. I have a Canadian farm radio. I think it was made by Circa. I'd have to go in and look at it again. It's up on a shelf, but it has the receiving radio license glued to the inside of it. That's where I first ran into that. So just interesting tidbit there. Back to net control. W8VPV, KA8WTK.
Bill, wasn't it required to have a receiving license in Great Britain also?
It was, but I'm not familiar with the dates and when they started that and when they stopped it.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I didn't know they stopped it. I didn't know. Okay, very good. And yeah, maybe we'll try AM. There won't be many people checking in anyhow, so I guess we'll go with the AM on that. Very good. Okay, thanks, Bill, and I'll listen for you then. Okay, Larry, K8PU, go ahead with your comments.
John, everybody on the net, not too much to say. I just can't believe we're just about wiped out January here, and this has been another mild winter so far. Run the machine one time to clean up a little bit, and the rest of it, man, we're just pretty much going outside doing things if we want to. So can't beat it. About halfway through, so glad to have it. I can't do 160, John. Don't have the sticks or wires or whatever up for 160, so I have to pass on that. And aside from that, I'll look forward to catching everybody next Monday night. So back to you, John. W8VPV, K8PU.
Okay, Larry, very good. Thanks for checking in, 73, and have a good evening. Okay, that takes us to the bottom of the list. So this is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor with John W03X at the mic, asking for check-ins.
Alpha Charlie 8 X-Ray Oscar.
Alpha Charlie 8 X-Ray Oscar, I have you, Vince. Another check-in, please. K8HMS. K8HMS, I have you, Steve. Another check-in, please.
Whiskey 8 Echo Zulu Tango.
Whiskey 8 Echo Zulu Tango, I have you, Frank. Another check-in, please. Okay, I got Kilo Echo 8, and what was the suffix? Okay, I got the X-ray. Well, we'll get back with you. I think we're having a little antenna problem with the repeater. Let's see, one, two, one more, please.
Kilo Echo 8 Tango Quebec Romeo, KE8TQR.
KE8TQR, okay, we have you. We'll get back with you in a moment. Okay, Vince, AC8XO, go ahead with your comments.
Good evening, John, and everybody on the net. I kind of tuned in late, so I don't know if anybody said the end of the month is near, a couple days from now. So it's that time to get any articles in if you're interested. Otherwise, it's going to be a real thin newsletter. Other than that, that's all I got. AC8XO, back to net.
Okay, Vince, thanks for notifying us. You heard what Vince said. It's getting to the end of the month, so get your newsletter articles into them. That's newsletter editor at cfarc.org. Okay, next is Steve, K8HMS. Go ahead with your comments.
K8HMS. Hope everybody are hanging in here, or down here. You know, I've been doing this radio 55 years, but always amazes me. The Clipperton Island expedition that was going on, I actually worked them on 12 meters with my big whoop-de-doo 60-foot long wire. Yeah, just amazing, and that was on sideband. They normally do CW, but anyway, just great how this hobby is. Anyway, back to that K8HMS.
Okay, Steve, you were breaking up some there, but when you were talking about the contact you made there, that all came through. So we're going to, the band exploration net this evening is going to be on 160 meters, 1887 kilohertz, and we're going to be doing AM, so when you go to check in on that, we'll be on AM. So again, that's 1887 kilohertz. So I'll be listening for you there. You can tune that 60-foot piece of wire up easily on 160 meters. Okay, so let's see. Next is Frank, W8EZT. Go ahead, Frank, with your comments.
Well, good evening, John, and everybody out there listening. Appreciate you running the net, especially on this somewhat rare fifth net of the month. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to get on 160 tonight. I will certainly be down there listening, but I was hoping to get a wire antenna up, and my yard is absolutely a swamp, so there's just no way I could get anything up in time. Maybe it's going to be a goal this summer if I don't get out of this house by then. Vince, if you're still listening, I do have an article in progress on where we're going with the Echolink project. I'll have that in a picture or two for you, hopefully within an hour or two. I'll get it done by the end of tonight and everything. Don't have a lot to report. Following up on what Larry said, yes, it has been a mild winter so far, but don't jinx us, please. Next 7 to 10 days out don't look too bad, but you never know. Mother Nature can certainly turn around anytime she wants and dump it on us. So, other than that, don't have a lot to report. We got a meeting coming up in, 9 days, 10 days or so. It'll be our February business meeting, and then coming up on that, an activity meeting, and I'm not sure what's there, but it's, again, probably going to be antenna-related. And just a final comment, the Echolink interface has been registered now with the Echolink people. If you go out there and look, you'll find an entry for W8VPV-R. It may be up and down as we're doing testing. Right now it's not hooked to a radio. I'm testing with speakers and a microphone, simulating the radio. Don't bother trying to check in or get on the air. It's not going to work yet. It will be up and down throughout February as we shake down some problems, come up with some operational changes, and after...
Repeater, timeout. Time, repeater, out.
Timed it out there. Anyway, Echolink, our Echolink facility will be up and running. It's registered as W8VPV-R. We still have some issues with it, so please don't try to check in using that right now. We'll have general announcements when it's up and available and in its permanent location. All right, that's all I've got. I look forward to hearing everybody on 160 tonight, and we'll catch you down the page. W8EZT, back to net.
Frank, do you still have that 43 feet tall radiator?
I have a 43-foot tall antenna in my backyard with some ground radials on there, but I've tried several times, and the tuner absolutely will not tune it on 160.
Oh, what kind of tuner is it?
Oh boy, it's a little self-contained unit that sits down there at the base. It's a oh shoot, it'll come to me. I don't have it right now. I can visualize it. It's a small brown box that I actually got with the antenna, but it will not tune it.
Have you ever measured that on 160 meters with an impedance meter, you know, like an MFJ 259B or anything like that?
I have not. The antenna on the radial field I put in, I connected to the gray box, and it seems to tune properly on everything but 160. 40 gives me a little bit of a pain also, but 160 I've tried several times and it just can't tune. You can see, watching the SWR meter in the shack here, you can see it bouncing around up and down, and it never really gets down below about 6 or 7 to 1, and finally the tuner gives up on it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I measured my 160 meter antenna, and it looks like 11 microhenries. And this MFJ, what is it, 994, can't tune it. So what I plan to do is add a little capacitor onto to help it out, so it can tune that thing, but not too much capacitance, because I also want that to work on 75 meters. So yeah, it's tough to match something that's not a real close match on 160 meters. So that's the story there. So happy listening on 160 meters there later. Okay, thanks, Frank. Okay, next was KEH something X. Please come back with your call. This is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor with John W3X at the mic.
EZT with more.
Kilo Echo 82 Papa X-Ray. This is Jesse out of New Franklin. I just wanted to check in and say thanks to Anthony and Frank for teaching the AM classes, and it's nice to be able to participate.
Oh, okay. Very good. Yeah, I got you real good there this time. KEAZPX. Thanks. Let's see. Frank had more there. W8EZT. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks, John. Unfortunately, with that 5 kilowatt broadcast transmitter 3,000 feet behind me, I would be a little hesitant to hook up an SWR meter to that antenna. Especially if it's tuned down near 1.8 megahertz, it might pick up enough RF to actually damage it. The other thing is, I'm surprised that your antenna is showing a reactive impedance or inductance, or inductive reactance, I should say. It's clearly shorter than it should be, and typically that would tend to imply it is capacitive in nature. So I'll be very curious to see what you've got going there. Please keep us up to date if you do get that tuner to work. All right, that's all I've got. I'll hand it back to you, John. Good job running that out, and I'll be listening tonight. W8EZT, back to that.
Yeah, Frank, that's what I would have expected too, since it's obviously shorter than 160 meters, or a quarter shorter than a quarter wave at 160 meters. But I wound a coil that's the same inductance as that, and that's what I used in the house to make a little matchbox out of capacitors, and they're adjustable, and all I had to do was a little fine tuning on that to match it. So what it is, it's a shunt feed wire. The wire is connected to a bracket that is the wire is 18 inches away from the tower, but it's at the 20 feet point, 20 feet up, and so that wire comes down, and then that's the connection. That's the feed point is at the bottom of that wire. So if you look in old handbooks, it shows to use two capacitors, one from that feed wire to ground, and then one in series from that feed wire to your coaxial cable, and that's exactly what works. So I'm not sure why it reads inductive when it's shorter. So that's the story on that. Any comment on that, Frank?
Okay, that's very interesting, and actually could make a very good project for a club meeting one of these days. But again, you're proving that there's theory and there's reality, and you're working with reality. So I defer to your reality, and by all means, go for it and keep us updated as to how it works. Thanks, John. I'll hand it back to you. W8EZT.
Okay, thanks, Frank. And I'll find the handbook that has that thing in it, and maybe I can have a brief little discussion about it. Okay, so next on the list was Keith, KE8TQR. Go ahead, Keith, with your comments.
W8VPV, KE8TQR. Good evening, John, and good evening to the rest of the group. Good to hear everybody tonight. I don't have a lot of traffic for the net tonight. Just wanted to add one for the numbers. I also don't have HF capabilities, John, so AM or lower sideband, it's okay. You take whatever you want. But anyway, that's about all. Like I said, just one for the numbers. Good to hear everybody tonight. Hope the rest of the week goes even better than today. And I'll send it back to you, John. Fine job on the net tonight. And this is KE8TQR saying 73, and God bless.
Okay, Keith, very good. Thanks for checking in, and maybe someday you'll have HF capability there. But thanks for checking in, and have a good evening, and maybe we'll hear you next week. The band exploration net will be on 6 meters, so you'll have capability there, I assume. Do you have 6 meters?
KE8TQR returning. Yes, I do. I have a 6 meter. I have checked into your 6 meter net, and I'm waiting for that Monday to roll around, John. KE8TQR, back to net.
Okay, very good, Keith. Yeah, I'll be the net control station again, so I'll listen for you. Okay, very good. Thanks for checking in, 73, and have a good evening and a good week. Okay, that takes us to the bottom of the list. So this is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor with John WO3X at the mic, asking for check-ins.
November 8, Bravo Alpha Yankee, Ralph in Stowe.
At 8, BAY. Go ahead with your comments. The big polyps are down now, so we'll go one at a time. Go ahead.
Good evening, John, and everyone on the net. I really don't have much to contribute tonight, just kind of sitting, listening, and relaxing. Hope we don't get too much snow tomorrow. They're only calling for a ½ inch, but I guess we can live with that, can't we? With that, this is N8BAY, back to net.
Yeah, okay, Ralph. When Larry was mentioning about the weather, it got me thinking about back when I lived in Pittsburgh. Let's see, it was in the 1990s. Let's see, I think it may have been 1994. Joe DiNardo predicted the weather forecast was partly cloudy. Well, he didn't say cloudy, he said cloudy. Partly cloudy in Allegheny County. And it snowed 15 inches, and that was in March. It was like the middle of March, and it snowed 15 inches. I think it was March 15th, the Ides of March. It snowed 15 inches. So I had a tire change on the back wheels of my 1982 Oldsmobile Delta 88 diesel engine. And it went very well, but that was a surprise snowfall. So hopefully we don't get anything like that, Ralph. So I hope you're listening, Larry. Okay, thanks, Ralph. So let's see. This is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor with John W3X at the mic asking for check-ins.
WA8RCN.
WA8RCN. Go ahead with your comments.
Hi, John, and the group there. I'm running late tonight. Just got down here a few minutes ago, and was hoping you guys still may be on. And I guess you were. So, yeah, I don't have too much to say. Just thought I'd jump in and say howdy to everybody, and maybe we'll catch you on the other frequency here later on tonight. W8VPV, W8RCN.
Okay, Jim. Yeah, the other frequency this evening is on 160 meters at 1887 kilohertz, and we're going to do AM. Do you have 160 meter capability?
Here's a weird thing on that. I still haven't figured this out yet, but anyway, I have I had an inverted V at the other house before I moved on the top of the 50-foot tower, and I had it for 80 meters, right? And I could run the either one of these radios and just fool it with the tuner and get on 160, you know. So I took it down and you know, I put it back up here on the 60-foot tower, and none of these tuners in these radios will load it like it did at the other house. It's weird. I don't get it. It's the same daggone antenna. It's only 10 foot higher. It should work better, and you know, so on and so forth. But so long and short story is no, because it tunes it down to about 4 to 1 or something, and that's as good as it gets. So I kind of got to rethink this in the springtime and figure out what's going on and do something else for 160, because the same antenna that works at the other house for 30 years won't work over here. It's, you know, 10 feet higher in the air. I don't get it.
Oh, okay, Jim. Yeah, very good. Yeah, Frank was saying that his being so close to the 5,000 watt transmitter, it could cause a problem if he was to measure it with an impedance meter. So he's reluctant to do that, to measure it, to see what to do to make it match. The tuner that he has, it's a remote tuner, won't tune it. And I was mentioning that this MFJ 994 won't match my antenna either. So since I've been using that for 160 meter, that shunt feed for 160 meters, I've been using it with a homemade couple of capacitors, adjustable capacitors. So yeah, it's tough to get an antenna to work on 160 meters. So thanks for checking in there, Jim. 73, and have a good evening. Okay, this is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor with John W3X at the mic, asking for check-ins.
Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor, Kilo Echo ACM.
Whoops, you dropped out. I got Kilo Echo 8 and I think Sierra, and then it dropped out. I want to try again. Well, you were in a good spot at first there, but then you either moved or something, or your battery went down maybe. Give it another shot there. Let's see if we can hear you. Lima. There you go. Kilo Echo 8 Sierra Tango Lima. Go ahead with your comments.
Yeah, I'm just happy to be able to get into a net. My wife, kids, and I, we just moved. We're down here in Worcester. I just threw up an antenna real quick on top of the house, and was just hoping to get in somewhere and see if I could get back into the radio game. It's been a few months since I've been able to play radio for a little while, so I'm glad that I'm able to reach out to somebody and someone can hear me. So, quite literally one of my first contacts here.
Oh, okay, Lee. Well, it's coming in well now. So whatever you changed there a moment ago, got it working well. Any other comments?
No, not really. Just thanks again for coming back to me. I'm glad I was able to make it. I hope everybody has a good week. And by the way, happy birthday to everyone, because today is my birthday.
Okay, well, happy birthday. And let's see, the band expiration net this evening is on 160 meters. But next week, that's because it's the fifth Monday of the month. So when we have a fifth Monday, we operate on a different band for that band expiration net. But the first Monday of the month, it's on 6 meters. So we'll be on 50.270 megahertz upper sideband. So maybe I'll be in the net control station, so maybe I'll hear you if you have an antenna for that. So thanks for checking in, Lee 73, and have a good evening. Okay, this is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor asking for check-ins.
Good evening, John. This is Kilo 8 Bravo India.
K8BI, good evening, Bill. What's going on there?
I don't really have anything special to report. Just wanted to check in and say hello to everybody. And everyone have a good week. At least it's not quite as snowy as last week, but I'm ready for this rain to move out of here and get a little more sun back in here. I'll kind of leave it at that. So good evening, everyone. W8VPV from K8BI.
Okay, Bill, very good. Yeah, I hope it dries up some soon. So thanks for checking in, Bill 73, and have a good evening. Okay, this is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor asking for check-ins. Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor asking for check-ins. Okay, not hearing any. I'll repeat the announcements. Okay, our next meeting of the next meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Amateur Radio Club is on Valentine's Day, February 14th, and it starts at 7:30, both in person and on Zoom. And in person, we meet at the Pilgrim United Church of Christ in Cuyahoga Falls, which is on Broad Boulevard, but you get to the parking lot near the entrance on 2nd Street, south of Broad Boulevard. Again, it starts at 7:30, and we would like to have a quorum, which is 16 voting members, so that we can vote on some business actions. Then on February 28th is our activity meeting, and particular activity hasn't been announced yet. Or maybe it is. It may be on the website. I didn't look. So that's the same time and same place. And so for Zoom, go to our calendar, and there'll be a link there on the calendar for the Zoom meeting. Let's see, there is a volunteer exam session on Sunday, February 25th. So if you know anybody that wants to take an exam, either to get a license or to upgrade, let them know. It's Sunday, February 25th at the Cuyahoga Falls Library. If they want to take that exam, go to the website www.cfarc.org, click on the word education, and then there's a yellow button in the middle that says to register for an exam. You click on that, and there'll be the calendar of exams, and you click on one of those, and then you pre-register for it. We just had a volunteer exam session on Saturday, and everybody that took the test passed. They did very well, in fact, and so everybody got what they intended to get. These volunteer exam sessions are pretty handy. Okay, let's see. So that's all I have in the way of announcements. So this is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor, last call for check-ins. Okay, not hearing any. Let's see. The band expiration net will be on at 9:30. It will be on 160 meters on 1887 kilohertz, plus or minus QRM a little bit, and we will operate on AM. We'll operate on AM this evening. So with that, this is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor. In preparing to close this net, I would like to thank all of you who took the time to join us and check in tonight. Without your participation, there would be no net. This has been John, and my call is W8VPV, and it's been my pleasure to host this evening's net. At this time, I will close the net with 15 check-ins, counting myself, and return the repeater to normal, customary amateur radio use. This is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor, closing the net at 9:20 p.m. local time, 7-3.
T above T M S M T V active. W8VPV repeater. W8VPV repeater.
Good evening. Calling all amateur radio operators. Welcome to the Cuyahoga Falls Amateur Radio Club Monday night band exploration net. My name is John and my call is W8VPV. However, for the purposes of this net, I'll be using the club call Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor. This is an open directed net. All amateur radio operators are invited and encouraged to check in. You do not have to be a club member. All traffic will go through net control, and since emergency traffic may break in at any time, please leave a brief pause between transmissions.
John, you got all kinds of feedback on your audio.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder what's causing that. Yeah, okay, go ahead. This is W8VPV for Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor. Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's see. Can anybody understand what I'm saying? Okay, well, I'm hearing you okay. Okay, well, I'll just keep talking here, and so, let's see, for the purposes of this net, I'll be using the club call Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor. This is an open directed net. All amateur radio operators are invited and encouraged to check in. You do not have to be a club member. All traffic will go through net control, and since emergency traffic may break in at any time, please leave a brief pause between transmissions. The purpose of this net is to bring together all amateur radio operators for the exchanging of amateur related ideas and information. Okay, here are the announcements. Our next meeting is February 14th at the Pilgrim United Church of Christ on Broad Boulevard, but you go in from the parking lot, which is on 2nd Street, south of Broad Boulevard. So we have a meeting on the 14th and a meeting on February 28th. We would like to have a quorum that's 16. Meeting so you can conduct some business. business, and there'll be an activity meeting on February 28th. Okay, so let's see here. Besides Frank W8VPV, I have him checked in. Are there any other check-ins? This is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor.
KA8WTK.
KA8WTK. Go ahead, Bill, and comment on what I sound like over there. There's a report that there's feedback when I'm not talking, but it doesn't sound too bad when I'm talking. Over.
Yep, that's about it. W8VPV, KA8WTK. Now, there was somebody tuning up on 1885, too, that for a minute there was blanking you out. But, yeah, I don't know what it is. It's very odd sounding, so I can't tell if it's when you're not talking or when you are talking at the moment. So I haven't heard just a carrier from you, but it's a little weird. Nothing else more to report here. I hope it's sounding okay. Hope we find out what's doing it. W8VPV, KA8WTK.
Yeah, okay, Bill. I noticed that if I'm not talking, when I just press the push to talk, that there are three humps on the band scope. 3 of them. So I don't know what's going on there. So I thank Frank for giving the report there. So okay, very good. So okay, this is so have a good evening there, Bill, and things should be better on the band exploration net next week, which is on 6 meters upper sideband. 50.270 megahertz. Okay, this is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor asking for check-in.
Rosette, is this frequency in use?
We're having a net right now, but we'll be over in probably in less than 10 minutes. This is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor.
Hello, CQAM calling CQ. Hello, CQAM calling CQAM 160 calling CQ. WC1X. Whiskey Charlie 1 X-ray. WC1X is calling CQ. CQAM calling CQ. Whiskey Charlie 1 X-ray. WC1X calling CQ and standing by.
Doesn't sound like he could hear you, John. KA8WTK.
He's W1 something. Okay, this is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor. Are there any other check-ins for this net here? Otherwise, I'll close the net. This is Whiskey 8 Victor Papa Victor. Let's see, WB8, what was the suffix there? WB8, go ahead. Oh, okay, Mike, WB8CXO. Okay, do you have any comments there, Mike?
Calling WC1X. This is K4KYV. K4KYV. Calling and listening. K4KYV from WC1X.
Good evening, Don.
I'm not sure with that CSA that's going on there.
Consulting for the time being, but copy you well and not much noise in the band.
Nice call for checking.
Very little or no thunderstorm static, and that's a good thing. Okay, Don, back to you from WC1X.
Yeah, okay, Mark, WC1X from K4KYV. Oh, things are a lot better than they were last night. So you can hear loud and clear tonight. Quiet out.
We're going to close this net now.
So I think
to close this net, I would like to thank all of you for the time for joining us.
Lightning storm up earlier, and that same weather front is still out, and it's out in the Atlantic Ocean. That gets moved to maybe 400 miles offshore. It's still there, but so far not hearing it. So it's a good sign. So just hope you're hearing me okay. WC1X.
Okay, fine, Don. K4KYV from WC1X. Yeah, you're strapping in here tonight. Probably about 25 dB stronger than last night. And yeah, the thunderstorm static was pretty heavy yesterday, but not tonight. Anyway, it was a bright sunny day here today. Got up to about 52. I was out and about this morning and passed by some trees and the Potomac River and lots of water. In fact, the creek down the street from me overflowed a bit. I could see a lot of debris in the road, but by the time I drove by, no water, so that's a good thing. They put out these little signs letting people know high water, but they're already subsided from the street. But I was on 40 and 80 with my Johnson Viking Valiant, which doesn't have the greatest audio, but I fire that from time to time and make sure it still works. Okay, Don, back to you, K4KYV from WC1X.
Okay, Mark, K4KYV. Well, I haven't really listened on 75 or 40, and I haven't been working a lot on 40 meters lately. I need to do some RFI, some RFI stitching on 40. I don't know why it is, but the amplifier we have in the house that it goes with the TV and the FM radio and all that. For some reason, when I go on 30 meters, my audio comes through on it. It doesn't cause any problems on 75 or 160. It's completely absent. But for some reason, it 40 meters, it comes right through that thing. In fact, my voice is louder than the programmers here are supposed to be listening. So if my wife is watching TV, I kind of stay off of 40 meters if she's watching TV because it'll blast through what she's doing. But I get on 75 and 160, that's no problem. So I need to take some time out and actually run some tests and find out just exactly what it is that's picking up the signal. We had an old amplifier that before it crapped out, and it wasn't affected by anything. But this new one, for some reason, 40 meters gets into it. So I have to check, see if it's just some of the audio connections or just what. I know a lot of our solid-state audio equipment is notorious for picking up radio signals. Just as a lot of the consumer junk that's it's out there now is notorious for spewing out RFI, all kinds of hash across the ham bands. And there's that one I was talking about last night that I hear on 160 about every, I think it's about every 50 kcs up and down the band that, and one of the the strongest one seems like it dwells right here on 1885. So haven't even started to try to chase that down yet. I had enough other stuff to do. I haven't really had time to fully devote to trying to chase down RFI sources in addition to all the other stuff that needs to be taken care of around here. So that's just pretty much what's going on here. So WC1X from K4KYV.
Yeah, okay, Don. Many years ago I had some RFI getting into my stereo system, and I determined that it was getting in through the speaker wires. So I shortened them up and put a few toroids on there, and it straightened it out. But you never know. I mean, you could have like a borderline plug connection and get some iffy, and some RF starts to rectify RF and get into it. And about 20 years ago, I had another Gates, same model, 250 water. And I remember I was on the air. I was using a compromise antenna. It was about 200 feet long, only about 30 feet off the ground. But I was making contacts on 160. And I know it was this development up about a mile and a half down the road on the same street. They were having some problems with interference on their cable TV system. That was mentioned to me, but I didn't say anything. I think it was a mile and a half away, and you know, they had cable. So one night I'm on the air, I look out the window, I can see the local cable company at night up in a bucket truck, evidently checking for signal levels. But if you would have looked my way, and you know, he was probably about 300 feet away, and saw me through the window on a microphone with this broadcast transmitter, I could have been found out, but shortly after that we moved, but yeah. But anyway, I don't have to worry about that here. Closest neighbor's about a mile and a half away and about 400 feet below me, so far so good. I think the only way I can cause them interference is if it gets picked up on the supply, main supply to the house, down the telephone poles that they get set up down the hill and get into their stuff, but that's probably not going to happen. Okay, Don, back to you. K4KYV from WC1X.
Yeah, K4KYV. Well, I remember when I lived up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, back in the 70s, and I had a ham station set up there. You know, of course, it was right in the middle of the city, and you know, all these little houses that were, you know, most of the old wooden three-deckers. They were kind of crammed up next to each other, not a lot of space between them. In the one that I lived in, there were 6 apartments in this wooden 3-deck, and I was on the top story, and I was able to run my antenna, which was an in-fed ZEP. I hooked up an in-fed ZEP that I strung it from the chimney on that old 3-decker. There was a brick chimney. It was no longer in use, but it was there, so it made a good anchor point for my in-fed ZEP, and then I ran it across the street. So there was a tree across the street, so I ran it across the street and terminated in that tree, and so I was able to get the ZEP. It's probably up at least 30 feet or so, and it did very well on 75. I don't think I even tried using it on 40, but and I think I did occasionally, you know, try to just make it work like an inverted error on 160, but you know, I didn't do much with it on 160. It was my operating from up there was primarily on 75. But anyway, I remember that I used to get complaints all around, because this was back in the 70s, you know, when the solid state stereos were, you know, they were real poppy. You know, the stereo where you had the a receiver that was probably in fact, you know, most of the receivers are probably about the size of I'm just trying to think of something off the top of the head, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. They're, you know, most of them are probably about standard rack size and maybe 5 or 6 inches tall. You know, they typically had the AM and FM radio, and then the stereo amplifier, and then of course the speakers. You'd have a couple of big left and right speakers that would be strung across the room from the amplifier, and that was a typical stereo system that was in use. Because this was back in the mid 1970s. And I used to get into those things all over town. You know, in fact, I even had some complaints of people that were several blocks away that said that I was coming in on the stereo. And in fact, I think I had some that had reported me to the FCC, but of course, you know, the FCC never came out to inspect anything. But the interference was me getting into audio equipment. That was the main cause for complaint, and of course that was strictly the fault of the stereo systems, because you know those stereo speakers, the way they'd be situated, you know, the left speaker and the right speaker, you know, they'd be some distance away. Those speaker leads would act just like the legs of a dipole, and the speaker probably actually acted like a little capacity loading on the end of it. So it made very good. You know, they made very good receiving antennas for radio signal, and then in those solid state stereos, it didn't take a lot of RF to make those things act like a radio receiver, even though they weren't supposed to. But I used to get all kinds of complaints all the time about that. I rarely ever had any TVI complaints. The only TVI complaints I had were right in the same apartment building. I did have a couple of issues there that I actually managed to solve, but my main source of annoyance was complaints from you know, the solid state stereo stereos that people were using. That, you know, seemed like I was getting over covering half the city of Cambridge with that thing, because I was running about 400 watts. I was using the same transmitter that I now use on 40 meters. I brought that rig with me. I took it with me to Houston. I lived in Houston for a couple of years and operated it there, then brought it here, and then eventually set it up here. And it's parked on 40 meters, and then I have my other homebrew rig parked on 75, and then this transmitter is parked on 160. So, but that was my main interference problem that I had back then, was just getting into audio equipment. WC1X from K4KYV. I'm sorry, I mean Don. Interference complaints. I was running a BC610 about a 100-foot long dipole, center fed with ladder line. And some neighbors about 100 feet away, maybe 200 feet, where I was getting into their phones. So I bought them these modular phone RFI filters, and that fixed that. Yeah, I remember two back in the 80s. The house I was living in was about 50 feet from a road. It was a main road in Rhode Island. A lot of traffic.
And my neighbors were pretty far away, so I didn't have any complaints. What would happen sometimes, they'd be running high power in their car. And they would drive by. Well, figuring it out, but I could hear the CB traffic on my stereo speakers with the stereo turned off. And the speaker wires weren't that long, maybe 25 feet, maybe 15 feet, but it was enough to pick up the station. So if somebody's driving by my house and they were keyed up on their CD and big amplifier, I could but for the most part, I've been pretty lucky. I mean, even when I lived in Israel, I was in a 3-story home and had a beam on the roof. It was a flat roof, so I put a tripod up there with a beam, both 10, 15, and 20, and had a vertical antenna. It was a helically wound vertical supporting, actually worked quite well. But neighbors were pretty close to me. But I did interfere with this guy's electric gate to his driveway across the street. And I put my action on it. And we got that fixed somehow, but they never approached me. And then I had a sprinkler system. But they had a, I don't know how to sprinkler system. It worked fine, but one time I think it was on 40. And it would actuate the sprinkler system, so you had all these little pop-up things. When the sprinkler system was running the water, they would go up and down in cadence with my CW. I could hear all these relays on the outside wall clicking to, valve the water through those sprinkler heads. But, nothing too bad. One more far out. Back to you, Don. K4KYV from WC1X.
Yeah, WC1X from K4KYV. Well, interesting. I want to know all your travels. You mentioned being in a number of countries when you back when you're working. Did you have a? I just wondered if you had a ham station set up in wherever you were. Were you able to get a ham station set up, or were there any countries where you couldn't do that? The only ones that I ever tried to operate a ham radio from was in Ethiopia. I did operate from Ethiopia for a while, but most of the other places I just didn't bother to try to set up a station. I would be the living situation and so on. I just wouldn't have had. It would have been very difficult to set up a ham station in some of the places I was located in, and some of the other places that I've been, and then that includes when I was out in California. So I spent some time out there and never did get set up out there. And but when I lived up in New England, I did operate from New England. I was up there for about 5 years, and I operated from actually I was in Cambridge the whole time, although I did move around to several different addresses, but still I did manage to operate a radio station from up there. But most of the other places where I've traveled around, I just haven't bothered to try to set up a ham station, except I did operate in Ethiopia. That there was a club station where I did most of my operating from. I didn't try to set up my own station and get my own call sign or anything, but I did operate the club station and enjoyed that quite a bit, because I was a DX and rather than being on the receiving end of the DX, I was at the sending end of the DX, and but I was mostly interested in trying to maintain reg-Q type of QSOs, and of course one of the biggest problems is that everybody would hear me. They wanted to, they wanted to work Ethiopia, and they were, to get a QSL card and all that. So it kind of sometimes made it a challenge to try to carry on a normal, non-DX type of QSO. But I did do it from time to time, and I'd just be curious, some of the places you were located where you were able to set up a ham station. As far as the RFI, one of the problems is touch lamps. I think that maybe they've kind of fallen out of popularity now, but for a while there were touch lamps were a big source of irritation because they on both ends. Those things were notorious for spewing out garbage across the radio spectrum, and at the same time they were also very sensitive to radios. And in fact, I heard a story. The only experience I ever had with one was when my daughter brought one home, and right away I noticed it was this terrible RFI. I didn't know what it was, and finally traced it down. It was her. She'd bought this touch lamp. So I told her, I said, well, you can stay, but that touch lamp has got to go. So actually what I did, I just took the thing and gutted the touch stuff out of it, and then mounted a regular, little rotary on and off switch on the base of it. And so she still had a lamp, but she had to actually reach over and turn a switch rather than just touching it. And she wasn't terribly happy about that, but I guess she wasn't too upset about it either because she still had her lamp. But I don't know. Those things put out a lot of garbage. A lot of somebody would be too lazy to reach over and operate a switch, and she had to reach over and touch the lamp anyway. Why is it that much more of a problem to actually grab a switch and rotate it or flip a toggle switch or something? But those things were notorious, back in the heyday. And in fact, I heard about somebody said that one of his neighbors installed touch switches on all of the all the lights in his house. He had replaced the wall switches with touch switches. He'd get on the radio and and whenever you transmit, all the lights in the guy's house would come on or they'd go off. So, I think like you say, you could see CW, and the lights in that house would actually flicker on and off in rhythm with the CW. And I don't know how they ever resolved that issue, but those things were a notorious problem. Especially if you had a house full of them. Every light switch was a touch switch. I can imagine the garbage those things spewed out. So that's been the main problem that I had here was my daughter's touch switch. And I remember the old black and white TVs with the horizontal oscillator that would, put out that garbage every 15 kcs all up and down the band. Those were a problem too. The old black and white tube type TVs, but of course now, the TV technology now, we don't really have TVI to worry about anymore, and the TVs generally don't affect the radio. So WC1X from K4KYV.
K4KYV, WC1X. Okay, Don. Yeah, I had a touch lamp many years ago, and when I would transmit, they would go from low, medium, high, and repeat that cycle like every second. Switch from off to a different brightness on a step sequence, and they did cause a lot of RFI, so I got rid of that thing. And I can remember back in the early 80s, I was living in Rhode Island. I moved to a small house I rented to. And it was about 5 miles away, so I was moving myself, and I had a pickup truck. And I remember I did it after work, and I made several trips, maybe 8 or 10 trips back and forth to the new residence to get all my stuff moved in. And it was a residential area that I had to drive through the last few miles. And I was on 2-meter FM, talking to some of my buddies on Simplex. And I drove by this car, and this parked car on the street, residential area, and its alarm's going off, so I didn't think much of it. And then I made another trip, like an hour later, and the same car alarm's going off. So the third trip, I thought, well, I won't key up until I get near this car, and I keyed up, and sure enough, I initiated this car alarm sequence. So I did that a bunch more times, being the prankster I was at that age. And I think the last trip I drove by the car and I see these people looking at the car very closely, like examining it. And as soon as I drive by I key it, and I kind of jump back because the alarm went off on them. So it wasn't very nice of me, but at the time I thought it was amusing. But there you go. K4KYV from WC1X.
Yeah, K4KYV. Well, I remember, when I was living up in Cambridge, that's when I kind of got a new lease on ham radio. Was back in the 70s when I learned that part because it seemed like that ham radio at that time, like in the late 60s, early 70s, it seemed like that AM had almost disappeared from the ham bands. There was hardly anybody on. And I never did really have any desire to work sideband. And it looked like that AM was pretty much going away. I had kind of lost interest in ham radio because of that. But then when I was up there, I started listening around. Actually, I ended up, I bought an old national HRO receiver, an old pre-World War II HRO receiver that I saw in a second-hand store. I think I paid $50 for it. Brought the thing home and fired it up, and it worked. So I said, I can. I got me a little shortwave radio. I just thought, I can tune around the spectrum, listen to foreign broadcasts, and maybe, tune across the ham bands to see if it was anybody there. And lo and behold, when I tuned on 75, I heard all this AM activity. And I was surprised, and the fact that most of the AM operators were young people. They were like, maybe seniors in high school, or maybe first or second year university students. Around probably 18, 19, and 20 years old. And I said, wow, this is really surprising. I heard all these young operators, they were operating AM. And so I started listening, and it seemed like there was a whole contingency of there was AM community was mostly up in the Northeast, largely in New England, around other parts of the Northeast. So that kind of re-sparked my interest, and I ended up I went to a ham fest. And picked up a Johnson Ranger and brought it back, and it didn't work. But I got it very cheap. I think I paid $50 for it, and but I was able to get it working, and I strung up the best antenna I could, and I was able to work a lot of the guys up there on AM, and it turns out that a lot of them had heard me because I had operated from down here. are tired of that, and a lot of them knew who I was, but they were very surprised to hear me on the air from up there too. But anyway, I kind of rejoined the AM community mostly up there, and it seems like that as time went on, the AM started coming back and started spreading more and more across the country. And of course, until it wasn't long until AM had been coming back for many more years than it was ever supposed to be dead. And of course, it's been it's been headed in that direction ever since. And despite that, now it seems like that all mode the activity has dwindled down. So, but anyway, that was kind of how my time in living in New England kind of re-sparked my whole interest in amateur radio. WC1X from K4KYV.
K4KYV, WC1X. Okay, solid copy, Don. Yeah, you asked about when I was overseas. I was in England for 4 years, and I did get a UK license, M0VOA. Probably about 25 miles outside of downtown London. I was able to put up a dipole, 100-foot dipole with ladder line to a tuner. So I was active from there quite a bit. And in Germany, I got a German license. I forget the call sign for my tour that page, but I think it was like DL4NC. Something like that. And I was operating from there, same basic antenna, just a long dipole. I used that dipole in ADC-10. And that was a spot in Germany. I was there for about 3 years. And then in Israel, I did 2 separate tours there, 2 years each. My first tour, I got an Israeli license. And at that time, they would open up a new prefix. Not the usual 4X4, but I got 4 Zulu 8. I was the first one to get that prefix. 4Z8BB was my call sign. And that was for expatriates that were living in the country for at least 90 days or more. So you didn't have a lot of people with 4 Zulu 8 prefix. So. Yeah, these prefix hunters. And I was quite popular on the higher bands. Lots of cards went out, lots of cards came in, so that was pretty fun. But, yeah, I first listened to ham radio when I was about 12 years old. My grandfather had a transoceanic radio, leather, aviator band, to the hijinks on 3885. Guys like W8VPV, W8VPV, there's one station in Putnam, Connecticut. I forget his call sign. Tim would know, but the guy long since passed away, but the tour was quite entertaining. And that was right around 1972, and 2 years later I did pass my novice test at age 14. But yeah, there was a lot of activity up there, and now it's dwindled down a bit, but that's like 40 meters on AM on the activity window on sideband. And that's being set up right in the AM window, and not too long ago, 5-10 years ago, it was always busy with AM signals, so you would hear very little sideband activity. But since it's sometimes not used that much, you see a lot of sideband encroachment. But anyway, that's how it goes, Don. Things change, I guess. Maybe it'll come back a bit more, who knows.
K4KYV. This is WST1X. Go ahead. WST1X. K4KYV. Well, it's use it or lose it. Because nobody owns the frequency, so if you don't use it, then somebody else is gonna fill in the void. So, but it seemed like that the overall decline in activity, seemed like it's across the board. It's just not all that crowded anymore. There usually is a spot to operate. If it's not right on the usual frequency, you can usually find somewhere nearby. But I can remember some of the adventures that were going. Yes, some of the first times that I met up with when I was up there was W8VPV at the time, and 10 W8VPV. And let's see, there was Joe, W81IWQ. He's still on the air. Oh, there's a whole long list of them. Some of them have passed on, no longer with us. But about time, most of the AM community was, they were young, like university age. There were a few older hams. Of course, there were some older AM operators, but they kind of didn't mingle with the young guys very much. Anyway, I set up, I used the Ranger, and then I moved to a different address in Cambridge. And then I built the homebrew rig, the 8005 rig that I now use on 40 meters. I built that transmitter, I think it was around 1974 or 75 that I put that transmitter together, and I could run about 400 watt from that in-fan set that ran from the apartment building across the street. It was a very busy street. And some stories I can tell about that antenna, because even though it was pretty high, it was up for probably a good 3 feet in the air. The problem I had was that those old wooden three-deckers that were in that neighborhood, those things were always catching fire. Those things were real fire traps. Especially being a multi-apartment building. All it would take would just be one person to be careless with a cigarette or with fire or something, and those things were always catching fire. And I think while I was there were at least 3 or 4 times, the fire trucks would go down the street. It was kind of a main thoroughfare where I had my antenna, and most of the vehicular traffic passed under without any problem. But the fire trucks, they had the ladders, and they could crawl down the street. They'd hit around town, and it would inevitably break it loose, and I don't think they ever broke the wire, but they would just break where it was attached to the tree limb, and I'd have to run out and grab it before there were any problems with it, and then have to put it back up. And the only way I could put that up was to wait till the wee hours of the morning, because that was such a busy thoroughfare that there's no way during the day that you could get out and try to stretch a wire across a street with a lot of traffic on it. I had to wait till about 2 or 3 in the morning when the traffic had died down. There was that lull in the vehicular traffic around 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was able to actually get out and I could feel my way climbing up that tree at night. I'd grab the end of the antenna and pull across the street and climb the tree, and then reattach it to the tree limb. I would usually at night just temporarily attach it, and then
when it was daylight, I'd climb back up in the tree and fix it right. But I had to do that several times because the fire engines had torn the antenna down when there's one of those old wooden apartment buildings on the block where I was living would catch fire, and there they'd go, and inevitably my antenna would go with it. Luckily, the one that I lived in never caught fire, but I know I used to always be paranoid about that. If I would go off for the weekend, I was always wondering, well, when it came back, would the house still be there, or would it still come to a fire? But that never happened. In fact, that house is still there. It's still standing, but that was always a concern whenever I would go off for the weekend, was while I was gone, that there was no fire, and I'd come back, and then the house would be no more. Because that happened. I know there was a house across the street from me. It wasn't destroyed, but it was damaged by fire. And then there was another big one that was like I think it was a four-decker that had 8 apartments, and I mean, it was this huge wooden apartment building. It was just in the street behind me, and that thing burned to the ground one time. That's so much for the adventures of living in the big city, especially when it's an old neighborhood. WC1X from K4KYV.
K4KYV from WC1X. Yeah, I used to live on Beacon Hill in Boston. It was, four townhouses attached, side by each. And this one townhouse they converted into 3 apartments, 1 apartment per floor. And I had a house there, an apartment there, and had a small vertical antenna on the roof. Lots of noise, though, being in such an urban environment. And I knew, I had friends that lived in Southie, and of course that's just chock full of 3-decker homes. And sprawling porches. But I guess nowadays those are all rehabbed or torn down and built up into something else because of the value of property. But Southie was really basically populated with all these 3-deckers made out of wood. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, I remember, listening to Tim and Chuck EKV back in the 70s. And of course, I worked them many times over the years, and I was away for I was in California for 8 years, and then some other international deployments. But then I come back, and it's it's just like I never left. When I speak with those guys, so that's pretty neat. But I was in Egypt for a year. I had a place in Madi, which is a suburb about just outside of Cairo. But I also had a place that'd go down to 1 week a month, Beni Suef Air Base. And I knew not to ask to put up a ham radio antenna up. And, they had flight operations there. I'm sure they'd be concerned that it would interfere with comms. He was on there full time, and he was into RC aircraft. Or whenever they were up flying military jets, they forbid him from using his RC aircraft, thinking that the transmitter would interfere with comms or navigation, which of course it wouldn't. But yeah, that was an experience being there for a year. But anyway, yeah, he made it a lot of fun, and glad I have this hobby in retirement. I've got a hell of a lot to do where I'm located at. As far as usual things one would do in an urban environment, but we do spend a lot of time outdoors hiking and a few other outdoor activities. We like it quite a bit, but when the weather gets cold like this, it's great to have ham radio on board.
Okay, Don, back to K4KYV. This is WC1X.
Yeah, WC1X from K4KYV. Yeah, well, that's, I've been at it. I was first licensed back in 1959. So it's been, you know, I had to stop and think about it and add up the years to figure out how long it's been. So that was, well, basically 40 years in the 2000s, and now it is or in the 19s. Now it's 2024. So that's 64 years that I've been at it. You know, ever since 1959. But I was actually only licensed for about a month. In 1959, I actually first got my ticket. It was in when I upgraded to general was in December of 1959. So I actually you know, operated as a general for less than a month in 1959. So I really, you know, essentially got my start in 1960. And that's pretty well, you know, whenever I had been someplace where it was convenient to set up a ham station, I've always done that. But I have spent time in a number of localities where it just wasn't convenient to set up a ham station, and then some of the overseas stations, you know, where you had to take out a license, and I knew I wasn't going to be there that long, so I just never bothered. And I usually had other things going on, you know, other distractions, so you know, I didn't really miss being able to operate. Although I was in France for about a year, and I remember when the U.S. and did a radio club once a month, and you know, I would attend the club meetings, and you know, I got to know a lot of them, but I never did try to set up a station there, because that was one of those deals where you had to take out a license, and there was paperwork involved, and I just said, you know, I'm not going to bother, so I didn't do it, and I ended up actually not staying there so long as I had planned to, and so I said, well, I guess just as well that I didn't. But anyway, it was always fun to at least listen whenever I had a receiver to listen on. And you know, I had an experience talking about with the radio is when I was in Ethiopia. You know, I ran this little well, I don't know if you really call it an apartment, but it was like a little you know, well, I guess it was more or less an apartment. It was like this two-room living quarters that were, and it was attached to another living quarters, you know, all in the same courtyard. And I remember I had a receiver at that time. It was, I think it was a Radio Shack DX150. You know, it was a little solid state. General coverage, you know, all band general coverage, AM and shortwave broadcast receiver, and it was okay, but of course it was built. You know, this dated back to it was built in sometime in the mid 1960s. And of course, back in those days, solid state technology had not developed to the point that it had now. So, you know, just being solid state, there were a lot of compromises. And of course, one of the main problems of that receiver is it had a very poor dynamic range. It overloaded very easily, and
and they were all, there were images and spurious signals throughout the range, but it was tolerable. I could monitor the ham bands and the shortwave broadcast bands with it, but I never did try to actually set up a ham station there because there was a club station that I was able to use, so I used that. But anyway, this experience, which I can never fully explain, I guess it's just that my memory played tricks on me, but I could have sworn, I could have absolutely sworn, because I can visualize being in the room where the radio and listening to the radio, and I could even remember the surroundings of the room and everything, and that had to be sometime in before May of 1970, because I left there in May of 1970, so it had to be sometime before then. But I could swear that I was listening on that radio receiver and tune into, because I used to tune into the BBC a lot, where you can get world news and some of the BBC programs, and I can distinctly remember tuning in to the BBC News and hearing the BBC announce, how the old-fashioned BBC programs, how they were always just a very dry, stig way of delivery, and I can almost remember what the newscaster said. He said, American rock musician Jimi Hendrix was found dead in his flat in London of a drug overdose. And I distinctly remember hearing that newscast, because then later on I left there, and I ended up coming back here later on that year. But then, what's so strange about that was that later on I was looking around, and Jimi Hendrix, yes, he indeed died in London, possibly of a drug overdose. I don't think it was ever really ascertained exactly what the circumstances were, but that didn't happen until I think it was August or September of that year. So it would have been impossible to have heard that broadcast when I was there, but I can just very plainly remember hearing that. The only thing I can figure out is that I heard the broadcast later on when I had moved back here. I picked up the broadcast, and somehow my memory over the years played tricks with me, and that I seem to recall it being in that room listening to that radio, because that would have been impossible. WC1X from K4KYV.
Okay, Don. Good copy again, of course. Yeah, sometimes I remember stuff way back when, and then I would later think, well, that couldn't have happened. It's before the actual event. That's happened to me at least once or twice, so I know what you mean. But, well, when I was in Israel, I got hand ticket for a total of 4 years. I can remember, like, on 80 meters, I'd be tuning around in the evening, and it would be totally devoid of signals. And there would be a little bit of activity in these DX windows, signals from Europe, and occasionally you'd hear an Israeli operator, work some DX. But the band was wide open as during the winter, and there was never a signal on there. And they just didn't operate it. Same thing when I was in Egypt. I had a receiver, and 80 meters, you were hard-pressed to find a signal. And same thing in Europe. I mean, there was activity on 80 meters with the UK hams, but not as much as the U.S. It's kind of interesting, but the higher bands were very active in Israel and in the UK. And I still listen to the BBC. When I moved to England, I bought a new car there. that car is convertible, but I bought a second car as a junker car to, use in bad weather. And it was an old Mazda 323, I think, I don't know, it was probably like a 1984, something like that, maybe 82. And it was right-hand drive, right-hand steering wheel, and it had AM, FM, and long-wave band. And so I would tune into the BBC, I think they call it Radio 4. And on 198 kilohertz, I believe. So it's interesting to see a factory-installed radio with long-wave, which of course they don't do here, but out in Europe, at one time was quite popular. My understanding, the British government set up these long-wave broadcasting stations before medium wave ever came into being, and most of it was from the for the general populace, because they would broadcast constantly these European football, or what we call soccer here, games, and then medium wave band came into being. But I also read that I think UK is going to stop transmissions on long wave sometime this year. But BBC or TV4, Radio 4, which is what they refer to as the broadcasting radio service of the BBC, they're going to stop sometime this year. And there's a couple of stations in France and Germany and some in the Middle East still broadcasting on long wave, but that's all going away, I believe, from what I've read. All right, Don, back to you. K4KYV from WC1X.
K4KYV, well, it was back a few years ago. Well, it was probably, I think back, it was probably more like maybe 7 years ago now, but I had first hadn't built my 160 meter Beverage receiving antenna. I hadn't had it up all that long, and and I decided to try it long wave European broadcast stations, because up until that point, I knew they were there, but I had never been able to pick up one over here. Of course, I had picked them up in Europe without any problem, but over here, I just, had never even heard the faintest trace of a carrier from those signals for some reason. I just couldn't pick them up. But then after I strung up my 160 meter Beverage, which is directional to the northeast, so it would, its directionality would extend right over into Europe. I decided, what would it do on the long wave band? Of course, it would just be a fraction of a wavelength, because the thing is only, I think at that time I had it stretched out to 800 feet. Of course, even 800 feet would be a fraction of a wavelength down on the long wave band. But anyway, I built a little tuner, just basically a little link-coupled tuned circuit that would tune to those frequencies, and I connected that with my Kenwood R1000 receiver. Now, the Kenwood R1000, the nominal frequency range only goes down to 200 kcs. But I discovered that it would actually down below that, it could down as low as 150, but at reduced sensitivity. But you could still, it could still pick up signals down as low as 150. So I tried listening around, and of course the band was just. The low frequency bands would just be full of images and all kinds of spurious garbage. It was totally useless to try to receive down there, just connecting an antenna directly to it. But through that tuned circuit, that was just basically a parallel resonant circuit with a variable coupling coil on it, that I rigged up to to listen with the beverage antenna, and it was amazing how it selected the signals, it rejected all the garbage and spurious stuff, and then despite that, receivers reduced the sensitivity down below 200 kcs. I was able to hear the long-wave broadcast stations all the way down. I think there's one on 161 or 162. It was in Germany. But it was a French-speaking transmitter, but it was located just across the border in Germany. Kind of like the same idea as the border blasters here, that where the transmitter would be located in Mexico, but they would be transmitting to U.S. audiences. Kind of the same thing. So this station is located in Germany, but they were French-speaking, and they, in fact, it was directional to France, but the signal happened to, it didn't miss North America by a lot, so the signal was readable over here. But anyway, I was able to use that setup, the beverage antenna, and then the long-wave tuner, and my Kenwood R1000, and I remember there were 5 distinct stations I would listen to. There was the BBC, what do you say, Radio 4. I remember the one on 198. I could get them, and there was that station in Germany. I think the one in Germany ran, multi. I think it ran maybe a couple of megawatts of power, and had a multi-tower directional antenna, pumping the signal into France. And then there was, I think there was a station in Morocco. I remember Morocco, and then there was one in Iceland. I get the BBC, Iceland, Morocco, and I think there was actually a French one that was actually broadcasting from France. I was able to pick it up. And then there was Germany, that the French-speaking German one. And the thing about it, I remember that those stations at times would come in well enough to be entertainment quality, and I was really amazed at that, because until then I had never even heard a faintest trace of one of those long-wave broadcast stations out of Europe until I set that up. But now, as you say, I think that band is pretty much falling by the wayside. I think most of them are, if they haven't already shut down, or are planning to shut down very soon, like the one in the UK. Because I remember the story of one in Sweden. I think at the time they were running, something like maybe 500 kilowatts of power, and their antenna had like a 4-tower array, and each one of the towers was about 1,000 feet tall, and of course that would have been very costly to operate just to maintain those towers, and lights on the towers, and all the maintenance. That would have been a dead expense, plus the expense of running 500 kilowatts. Broadcasting 500 kilowatts, that would have been another something that took a lot of money. But anyway, they did a survey, a listener survey, and it turns out that they came to the conclusion that there were only about 100 listeners that were still listening to that station. That people had moved away from that, were listening on FM, or most likely they were listening to FM and no longer listening to the long-wave station. But anyway, that station only had about 100 listeners, so they were spending all that money to maintain the towers and 500 kilowatts of power to reach 100 listeners. So they decided to shut it down. So that was the end of the Swedish long-wave station. WC1X from K4KYV.
Yeah, K4KYV, WC1X. Yeah, I remember traveling around in England listening to long wave, and I could get Radio 4, of course, run by the BBC, and stations in Germany and France. and it received it quite well. You know, it's just a little factory installed antenna on the car, and you know, operating so low in frequency, but it picked up those stations just fine. So it's quite interesting. Yeah, I don't have a beverage antenna up, and I should put one up. I save it every year before spring starts and everything starts growing in here. Maybe a kick to listen to some long wave before the whole thing shuts down. But medium wave, it's all talk radio now for the most part. And even that, I guess that revenue is down, so who knows how long AM broadcast band's going to last. I guess Ford or somebody was contemplating no longer putting AM radios in their cars. I guess supposedly there was a problem with all the electronics in these new cars interfering with the AM band, and that was the solution, just to have an FM receiver in the cars that they make now. But oh well. Okay, Don, I think I'm going to take a break. But nice working you again. Very strong signal between 30 and 40 over S9. A bit of QSB, but certainly not like last night. After a while, it felt like, you know, summer conditions with all the static, but certainly not tonight. Anyway, turn it back to you, and we'll be back for one more. K4KYB from WC1X.
Okay, WC1X from K4KYV. Yeah, there's a world of difference between last night and tonight. There's a world of difference between the signals. So I guess just the propagation and the combination of propagation and the thunderstorm activity to the east of us. But tonight things are pretty quiet, and signals much stronger. So it's been good. Anyway, Mark, we'll catch you later on, and maybe later on in the week or whenever. So, always good to hear you, and you know, good to hear a good signal out of your location. So, I'm gonna take some later. WC1X. This is K4KYV.
Okay, Don. Nice working you again. Take care. Maybe we'll work on 40 someday. 73s from WC1X.
That was a nice carrier, but I didn't hear any audio.
This is W3X. Do you have a copy on me? Whiskey Oscar 3 X-ray. Over. W3X clear.